Well, it is our pleasure and privilege to have Andrew Cummings back with us. We just figured out this week that this would be the best night for him to give a report, so that's what we're going to have him do. I'm going to turn the service over to him now, and he can close us in prayer when he's done. So welcome, Andrew Cummings.
Well, good evening. I want to thank, first of all, thank whoever chose the hymn, "Come Thou Fount." That is my all-time favorite hymn. And I want to thank whoever put the words up there that actually include the term Ebenezer, because that's one of the reasons it's my favorite hymn, because of that Old Testament imagery. And in fact, it's no accident that the church we started in Brazil is called the Ebenezer Regular Baptist Church. I got to pick the name. I recall I was in Louisville, Kentucky, with Dad and Daniel for a conference, the T4G conference, I think it was, and they sang that, but they sang it with the newfangled words. And there's a Twitter account, which if you don't follow it, you should. It's called Church Curmudgeon. And apparently he was in the audience at that time, because just after they got done singing, it popped up, and I'll never forget the tweet that he posted. It said, "How I miss my Ebenezer. No one knows just what it means. I sure do wish someone would teach it to the guys in skinny jeans." Have never. That's what I took away from that conference. Time and money well spent. So I want to get right into our presentation. I want to thank you. First of all, thank Pastor Ryan for giving me this time. It wasn't my intention even to do this, but he graciously offered it, and so I'm not here on a visiting trip. I'm here to spend time with my family and my folks, and so. But I appreciate this opportunity. And when I have the chance to share with fellowship, I always jump at it, because this church, far and away, has invested the most in my own personal ministry, and I mean my own personal life and ministry. And so we're very happy to be able to present this. I do want to give a warning, and that is, and I usually have to give it at fellowship, because I usually end up speaking here pretty much just as soon as I walk off the airplane. And so for the last 3 years, all my public speaking has been in Portuguese. And so if strange utterances come from my mouth, just be comforted by the fact that it is a known language, and there are people here who can interpret. So we fall right within the biblical parameters for tongues in the church. So I want to start out with Proverbs 16:9, and I was trying to think of a verse that would characterize since 2021 up till this point in our ministry, and Proverbs 16 and verse 9 comes to mind. "The heart of the man plans his way, but it is Jehovah that directs his steps." And not too long ago, about 3 years ago, we were here and we were talking about what we were going to do next and what were in our plans to do next. And God graciously allowed us to do some of those things, and then in the middle, he said, oops, now we've got another plan. And so we went into the other plan. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. I made this slide presentation. Actually, my wife came up to me and said, "What are you going to tell the people at fellowship?" And I said, "Well, I'm still thinking about it." And she said, "Here, why don't we sit down together and do it?" She wanted me to make sure she's not going to be here to correct me, so I have to say the right thing. So I have never done this before, this particular presentation, so I'm as interested to see what I'm going to say as you are. We'll start with when we went back to the field, we had turned over the Ebenezer Church to a pastor, Pastor Francivaldo, who was doing an excellent job. And there's a dynamic in foreign missions where a lot of times I've seen it happen where the American missionary stays on as the national missionary comes in, and there's a dynamic there that really doesn't work, and it's caused problems. So we determined that we weren't going to be the cause of any of those problems. So we stepped aside and we're looking for another local church ministry to be involved with besides Ebenezer. And so the Boas Novas Church is one of our sister churches. They were going through a rough patch. Their pastor was going through a rough patch, so we decided we would kind of go in and help him and help the church. So we did. He ended up leaving shortly, not too long after we arrived. So we just stayed on at the church and kind of helped that church with their different things they had going on. The church asked if I would assume the official pastoral role, and I said, no, that would be a step back for your church because you don't need a missionary pastor. You're able to call your own pastor. And so but we did help. If you want to go to the next slide there, we did help with several things. Itasiara worked with their, how do you say it in English? Their music ministry. And I worked with the preaching and discipleship, and Itasiara also did a ladies' ministry, which you can see on the top there. In fact, that was particularly fruitful. They had they set up a Bible study where many unsaved women came, and just before we left, one lady accepted Christ as her Savior, and that ministry has actually continued. Someone else took it over, and it's continuing to this day. So we were content with that, and our plan was actually, when we left here, I think for our furlough, our plan was actually, okay, we're gonna just help out in one of our local churches, but our main ministry is going to be the camp. And so we were able to do that, and in a little bit I'll tell you about camp ministry. And we were content to work in this church. In fact, another thing we did, we had a team from Florida. If you want to go to the next slide. Yeah, we had a team from Open Bible Baptist Church in Orange City, Florida. They came down and they helped with a vacation Bible school, did some other things at that church. And so we kind of thought, well, we found our church home, and that's kind of our base here while we dedicate our lives and ministry to the camp. And God graciously allowed us to do that for roughly a year and a half. We were able to do that. And then, if you want to hit the next slide, and then I came home one day, and my neighbor came to meet me, and he was, my neighbor is also a deacon at the Ebenezer Church, and he came to me and he looked very troubled, and I asked him what the matter was, and he said, well, our pastor just turned in his notice. Now, I need to back up. The pastor that we turned over the church to, Pastor Francivaldo, he stayed there after we turned it over to him for about 2 years. And we turned it, if you're keeping track of the timeline here, we turned it over to him before our last furlough. Anyway, so for about 2 years, and then he called, the church called another man to serve, and this other man came and stayed a total of 10 months, and just out of the blue said, I'm leaving, and then packed up his family and left. And we hadn't been really involved with Ebenezer, so we really didn't know what was going on. So we went to visit as soon as we realized that happened. We decided, well, let's go and see. And we were dismayed in that we found the church basically on autopilot. They had no outreach to children, and we had started that church with outreach to children. And they had no outreach to young people. And the church had at one point a vibrant youth ministry and many, many other things that had been going on in that church that were not there. And we found the church also completely demoralized. And so Itasiara and I really didn't even have to talk about it that much. We said, well, we're not going to let our daughter church, the church that we started, we're not going to let it die on the vine. Financially, they were in absolutely no condition to call a pastor. So we explained the situation to the people at the Boas Novas Church, and so it was at the very beginning of 2024, we offered to the church if they would like to call us back, we would come and minister at the church, and it was unanimous. The church called us back, so we began, and that's why I called it their Ebenezer 2.0. And so we started, and so besides the camp ministry, which we'll talk about later, we started working once again at Ebenezer. So here's some of the things we've been doing at Ebenezer since then. Like I said, they had no church, in fact, the first service I went to, there were no kids in the service at all. Nobody under 16 in the church at all. And that's a death knell for a church. That's for any ministry. And so we said, well, that has to be a priority. So we started a kids club. We started up again, and we started, Itasiara and I and a couple volunteers from the church, we started canvassing the neighborhood, inviting kids. There's a whole neighborhood, extended family of kids that started coming. And so now, a year and a half later, thanks in great part to the efforts of Itaciara and also some of the people in the church, we have the group that you see up there. And so it's been exciting to see that kind of revive and get going. And it's also been exciting to see because at the very beginning, it was just Itaciara and I, and every once in a while, another person from the church would come to help. And now, several people from the church are helping with this ministry. So that's been progress that we've enjoyed seeing. If you want to go to the next picture, these are some of the fruits that we have seen from that. The group of kids that you see on, let's see, on the left, those are kids who started coming to the kids club and now regularly come to our church services. So that's exciting to see. And then the two girls, the one in the middle and the one in the left, have made decisions for Christ since we started. And so if you want to pray for them, their names are Maisa and Sophia, and they're very, you can tell they're thirsty for the word and they want to participate. They have a problem, and that is the adults in their life who really don't care about their spiritual growth at all, not believers. And so anytime something comes up that interferes with church, they're gone. And it's not because the girls want to, it's because of family pressures. So be praying for these two. Then I mentioned there was no youth group. Well, Itaciara and I started working individually with some of the teens who were coming, and we put together activities. And so now our church has a it's not as large as maybe I would like it, but you can see these are pictures of some of our teens at different youth activities that we've had. And pray for these group because there's some young ladies and young men among them who were kind of working to develop in leadership qualities and into leadership roles. If you want to go to the next picture, Itaciara and I sat down and we decided to be very focused in terms of our discipleship in the church. So let's see, on the top you can see a couple young men. There's Pedro and Alison. Pedro and Alison are two young men that I'm working with specifically to take on leadership roles in the church. Alison today, probably about right now, is preaching the message at the church. So I've worked with him in terms of being able to preach and prepare messages and develop sermons. And Pedro, I'm also working with him on that. And also he's kind of developing a latent musical talent. And so tonight, he's actually leading the worship at the church. Be praying for these two guys, Pedro and Alison. Meanwhile, Itaciara, there are two young ladies who have made decisions for Christ. They made their decisions for Christ outside the church, but they've started coming, and so Itaciara has started discipling them. And I'm trying to see. Oh, and then the young lady on the bottom right-hand side, her name is Maria. She's Pedro's sister, and she's been someone that we've been working. We have a children's missionary that works with us and with our church named Valderleni. And Valderleni has been working with Maria to train her to do children's ministry. And she's been doing really, really well. And so we're trying to get the church to the place where there are people who can assume leadership roles independently of whether or not we're there or not. And so and we're excited to see the progress. It's not been easy. It's not been very quick. We still have a ways to go, but we're definitely farther along than when we were back at the beginning of 2024. And then when we arrived, the church was doing absolutely nothing as far as outreach to the community, absolutely nothing. And so the first thing we did here in Brazil, we have a tradition in our church. It's called a vigília. The closest thing we have here in the U.S. would be a lock-in. Does anybody remember youth group lock-ins? Those were okay. So but our vigílias are kind of like lock-ins in that we stay up all night, but they're not like lock-ins in that it's mostly preaching and praying and training for ministry. That's what we do. And so we had our first vigília, and our focus in the preaching and the training and the praying was in evangelism. And then like 2 weeks after that, we had our first evangelism outreach, and it was a blessing. That's the picture on the right up there. It was a blessing. Several people from our church came out, including the most unlikely people. I thought, some people, they're not going to want to do evangelism. There's an older couple that you can see, Pedro and Rosa, and it shocked me. No, Pastor, we're going to be there for evangelism. And Pedro especially. Pedro is one of the blessings of our church, but he's It's not we have 2 Pedros. Which for Brazil, that's a low number of Pedros. There should be more. Anyway, we have 2 Pedros. And the older Pedro, he's very reserved, and he's a relatively new convert. And in fact, before he was a convert during our first ministry there at Ebenezer, and before he got saved, he hated Christians. I mean, he literally hated Christians, and then his wife got saved, and that was complicated for him. But and he would bring her to church, and then he'd sit out in the car, and so now he comes to church. And then he started coming in and sitting in the service, and to make a long story short, he got saved. And he really got saved. And so now he in fact, we were at a birthday party of his, and they asked me to give a devotional. So I shared a devotional, I shared the testimony, and I said, Pedro here is an example of God's grace because he's told me that before he was a believer, he didn't even like Christians. And Pedro was sitting right over there. He said, "Yeah, Pastor, I didn't even like you." Thanks, bud. But that's changed, obviously. And he's there, and to see this guy out there and just sharing and excited. Where can we go next? Who am I going to go with? How can I, that was amazing. And we actually had fruit from that, people who started coming, people who visited, contacts that we've made. And that was we did that the first semester of this year, and we have another one planned for the second semester. In our next one, there's a park near the church that has a public park that has fallen into complete disrepair. The city hall it's completely neglected by the government, but it's like the central part of a major residential area. So we're going to go, if no one beats us to it, we're going to go and we're going to fix it up as a church on one weekend. And then the next weekend, we're going to all go out wearing the same t-shirts that we wore while we fixed it up. Hopefully we'll wash them. Then we're going to go and evangelize the community and have an evangelistic service with an evangelistic message in that park. So if you want to pray for that, that's something that we're in the works for the next semester. So, and seeing the church enthusiastically get behind this kind of thing, I just wish I could communicate you how much of a change it was since the beginning of 2024. So we've been excited to see that. If you want to move to the next thing, we also, one of the highlights of the last since we did that was the church retreat and baptism. And in fact, I was given to understand that the baptism was shown here because my dad was there, my parents were there, and my dad actually had the privilege of baptizing Nathaniel. And he did it in Portuguese. So everybody was impressed. No one saw that coming. Everybody was impressed. So we were very excited about that. And we also baptized there was Nathaniel and 2 other young people that time. This retreat, we don't have any baptisms, but we have planned, but we have a few in the pipeline for hopefully next year. So we're excited about that. That retreat, by the way, will happen. I get back on the 20th, and the retreat, our church retreat, will happen the next week. Okay, so that's where God changed our paths, because we weren't planning on any kind of Ebenezer ministry. We would not have chosen that. Our choice would have been, we would just want to focus 100% on the camp ministry. That's where we felt God had gifted us. That's where what we felt God wanted us to do with our remaining time in Brazil. And God said, nope, you're going to go back to Ebenezer. And it was actually it's actually a unique kind of privilege, because after I left Ebenezer, there were several times as I would visit other churches, or as I would think, or as I would have my devotions and read and so on, I would think, oh man, when I was a pastor, I really did that wrong. And if I were ever to go back, I would do things completely differently. And it was like God was saying, okay, you get your chance. So it's been neat to see that work out and see what God has done at the Ebenezer Church. Now, all that to say, we still had a camp to run. And so while all of this is going on, we still are working at the Mount Zion Baptist Camp. So let's talk about some things that happened there. This term, we have seen the camp really come into its own as far as the kind of ministries, doing the kind of ministries that we always envisioned the camp doing. So if you want to hit the slide, and one of the reasons for that is what happened on our last furlough, and the funds that we were able to raise for the dormitory, which none of this that I'm showing you now would have been possible if we had not been able to house adequately the campers. And so just to recap, when Larry Madrid passed away, gifts that were given in lieu of flowers in memorial to Larry Madrid came to over $17,000, which together with other donations that came in allowed us to purchase the piece of property and a kind of half-built house that we could transform into the dormitory. So that's what we did. And you can see kind of from left to right, kind of the progress of construction there as it was under construction. And we do call it La Casa Madrid. And you say, yes, that's Spanish, not Portuguese. Yes, we understand that, but that's a little tip of the hat, I guess, to Larry Madrid. And also, you won't be able to see it in these pictures, but we have every one of the rooms has a name, and the names are names of minerals. And if you know Larry Madrid, if you knew Larry Madrid, you understand the significance of that. So we have onyx and marble and granite and let's see, ruby and sapphire, and I forget there's one more. But so those are our rooms for the names of the rooms for the camp. So for the dorms. So and then go ahead. Here's the finished product. On the right, that is that's a picture of the first time the dorm was used at that teen retreat, the teen retreat of 2022, I believe. That's the first time the dorm was used. So there's all the campers outside the dorm for that picture. And then after that, we still built on the porch that you see there, and there's actually two porches, one on that side and one on the other side, which increases the amount of people that can sleep in the dorm. Because in Brazil, we're not worried about bunk beds or any kind of anything like that. We use hammocks and cushions, and so when we have it all full with hammocks and cushions, we can fit comfortably. That's a relative word. Comfortably, about 65 people in these dorms. So that's much more than we could fit beforehand. I'm going to throw out a prayer request. In 2027, when we get back, we're going to be raising funds to build, because the area we purchased has a lot more space, and so to be able to build another dormitory that will at least double in size the amount of people that we can hold. So just be praying for that. That's going to be our next major project at the camp. Keep going? All right, so what do we do at the camp now? Well, we have three main activities every year. We have our ladies' retreat, and our ladies' retreat is a highlight for a couple different reasons. Number one, our ladies are something else. Our ladies have and when I say our ladies, I'm talking about the association, the women's association of our area regular Baptist churches. They are a force to reckon with, and a force for good, because they get together and they have their retreat is always the most organized, it's the longest retreat, and they also during the year they raise money for the camp, and so these are a Brazilian entity, and all of our churches support the camp one way or another. But our ladies every year take on a project and raise it, and so far, since the camp has started, our Ladies Association has bought for the camp a industrial stove, a freezer, 2 drinking fountains, one of which I went to pick up from where it had been delivered the day that I got on the plane to come here. So that afternoon, I went to pick that drinking fountain up. So 2 drinking fountains and about 50 chairs and 10 tables to the camp. So. And that's all from our ladies in our churches going out and having fundraisers and bazaar, I guess yard sales, what you would call it, and or flea markets and that kind of thing, and through their work raising those kind of things. So we're very excited. So once a year we have a ladies retreat. Once a year we have a teen retreat. That's coming up this year in December. And if you want to hit the picture there, here's some of the pictures from our last teen retreat, which we broke all the records as far as number of teens in attendance. And then, if you want to go to the next page, now this one is actually something started by this church. When the group went down in 2023, we had our first English day, and we had scheduled last year an English Day, and then something happened with the church that was planning on coming down. They weren't able to come down. However, in 2026, we have another church in Pennsylvania that's raising support, and they're planning. Hopefully, we're going to have another English Day. So you remember that. I think we've got some pictures of that. And one thing that this church did is they helped build the water slide, which we used just that once at its current location. And because if you remember, if those of you who were there, it was great as far as getting people going really fast. Not so great as far as them stopping. It's like my dad has this phrase that he says that it's not the fall that hurts, it's the sudden stop at the end. And it was that sudden stop at the end that was really complicated. And so we got to thinking, what if we took the water slide, the same concept that we now know can work because the fellowship team did it, but we take it and we run the slide right into our swimming area. And so we did that, and you'll see a video later. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. And we've also you'll see a video later of our zip line. It's outstanding. So anyway, this is our youth retreat. Now the cool thing, and I don't have a picture about this last youth retreat that we had a speaker come from the southern part of Brazil, and he gave an outstanding series of messages. 2 guys that were there, they're in that picture, they went home and talked to their pastor, and as a result of the message, they got saved, and about 2 weeks ago, they got baptized in their church. And that's why we do all of this. The zip line is fun, and the pool tables, are we allowed to have pool tables here? Okay, all right. If not, forget I mentioned that. All the other activities we have, and the volleyball, all that kind of stuff. That's all great. But the real reason we do that is for the spiritual impact of the people, and it's had a tremendous impact from people getting saved, from people getting right with God, and from also the sense of purpose and mission that it has given to our churches, because now our churches have something, a project that all of them are working together on, and it's been a tremendous unifying factor among the churches. And so we're very, very excited at what God's doing with the camp ministry. If you want to go to the next picture, I have this video, and I'm going to try to narrate along with it a little bit, but this kind of gives you an idea. This was taken at our last carnival retreat, which is, by the way, the 3rd activity we have every year. So we have carnival retreat, ladies retreat, and then the teen retreat, plus all the different churches that use it and other groups that come in and use the camp also. So anyway, this kind of gives an idea of what a typical activity at our camp looks like. So first of all, they arrive in the bus, and this was put together, by the way, by our social media team for the camp, and this kind of gives you an idea of the chapel. Now, at this particular retreat, we had a dedication ceremony. One of the pastors who was influential in the field has passed away, and we dedicated that area to him, his memory, and we even had fireworks, which you'll see right there. So this was, just to give you context, this was the beginning of this year, February of this year. And then we have the different services, preaching services, praise and worship team. I said our social media team. It's a bunch of teenagers that know how to use Instagram. This was our speaker, who was a pastor that is pastor of the church I grew up in upstate New York. There's the zip line. We built this, by the way, by watching videos on YouTube, figure out how to do it. This kid's so excited. His mom hugs him. It's great. So far, injuries have been in the minimum. They've been very. And then this is the water slide. As you can see, those of you who were there, it's not nearly as steep, but it's also, I'm not taking people to the hospital, so that's good. This is Carnival Retreat, and so one of the churches, the church that had the most people there, they decided to celebrate communion while they were there, and invited us to attend. These are different games that we have. The lady on the left is the lady who's the children's missionary that's working with our churches now. There's Pastor Jamie and myself. And then there's the kids telling what they've learned in their children's sessions. Our carnival retreat is not just young people; it's whole families together for that event. And our children's missionary giving their lesson. This, by the way, is at the dormitory underneath the veranda that we built. In the back there, you saw a quick glimpse of one of the drinking fountains that the ladies bought. I could never figure out the rules of this game, but it's funny. You'll see why in a minute. To this day, I don't know the point of it, but it's hilarious. There's a wipe out there. One of the great things about camp, those of you who went know, is just the beautiful view that we have up over the jungle. This is our swimming area when kids aren't swimming in it. One cool thing is our people, they're not content with just preaching, so we have Q&A times after each session, and it's really fun, really neat time. You never know what kind of question you're going to get. And there's our speaker getting his gift, and the winning team. And Brazilians don't hold back in competitions and get very excited when they win. That's not during the service, and the view from the camp once again. All right, so we can go to the next slide. I think we have a couple more slides. Okay, there's a couple other ministries that God has allowed us to be involved in. The main one is our Bible Institute ministry. Basically, really quickly, we have had a terrible time trying to get pastors to come from other parts of Brazil to São Luis. In fact, when I went there, I thought one of my jobs that I would do, one of the things God might use me to do, would be to attract other missionaries from the U.S. to São Luis, and also other people from Brazil to São Luis. And to this date, I have been able to attract at exactly 0 missionaries from the U.S., and the same amount of pastors from other parts of Brazil. So, getting together with the pastors that we have, we decided that we looked around us and we saw that the pastors we have, in fact, you can see most of our pastors are in that picture. We're missing one of them, but every one of those people in that picture is from the state of Maranhão, except for me, and I'm married to one. And so we kind of got the idea, okay, maybe the best thing we need to do is to start developing the people that we have here. And so we set up a little Bible Institute. We have no ambition of making it into a full-fledged Bible college. We want no kind of accreditation or anything like that. Our single purpose is to train people for ministry. And it's a long-term thing. We're not going to train people overnight. It's a long-term thing. We're working with some young like 16, 17-year-old teenagers as well as adults. And it's a very simple program, teaching the basics, but focusing on skills people will need to work in ministry. So it's been my privilege. I've taught Old Testament survey and church history. Itasiara has taught teaching methods. She's outstanding, and her class packed out. My last class, I had 3 students. Her last class, she had like 20. That shows you the relative teaching skills between the two of us. So anyway, It was outstanding class. And so this, by the way, if you go to the next slide, we have here some of the Itaciara with one of her students. These two guys that on the top right, there's me and one of my, I said my last class was 3. The class before that had some more. That's my church history class there. So, but these two guys here are if you want to pray for them, they're from the First Baptist Church. Their names are Afonso and Vito. And Afonso and Vito are 2 of our young promising guys that I see in ministry for in the future. In fact, Afonso I have scheduled to come give a devotional at our church in the near future, along with one other guy from First Baptist Church. And that's another thing we're trying to do. Guys who are in our churches, that we're developing within our churches, we're giving them, we've kind of decided among us as pastors, we're giving them opportunities to speak in the other churches so they can get that kind of experience. And hopefully, along the way, some of these guys will feel called to full-time ministry and be developed in that way. So, besides those, we have been involved in some other activities. Here's just a few of them. If you want to go to the next slide. We had a young man come down as part of an internship from Faith Baptist Bible College. You can probably pick him out from that picture. I don't need to tell you which one he is. His name was Marcus, and he spent a couple months with us and did an outstanding job. And I know that for a fact that our mission agency is in contact with him. I don't know where God's going to lead him. We would sure love it if God would lead him back to work with us in São Luis, and we really hope he does. And I'm saying all of this because as soon as I get the video from this, I'm going to send it to him, so he'll hear it. Another thing we do every year, a teacher from the local university invites me to give a talk on Thanksgiving, and she's a believer, so her idea is, okay, we're going to talk about Thanksgiving, and Thanksgiving is an essentially Christian holiday. Give thanks to who? So I get to share the gospel with this group of university students. Some of you may remember that I was taking university classes in the philosophy department. That was one of the most fun mission fields I've ever had. I mean, if there's ever in enemy territory, it's in the philosophy department of a secular university. And I had more fun in there than I've ever had in my life. And but once we took on the Ebenezer Church, there was no way that I could continue to do that. So I transferred all over, and I'm trying to finish up my Brazilian degree online. So that's where that is. But we still have this contact with the university, and they're able to do that once a year, this gospel. And these also are a lot of the kids who we target when we have our English retreats, because they want to speak English to native speakers. And so it's a huge opportunity. So if you want to pray that this English retreat in 2026 will work out, because it's a huge moment for us. And then Itaciara, as if she didn't have anything, if she didn't already have enough on her plate, she volunteered at a local elementary school teaching English. And so she's been doing that for a couple years now and absolutely loves it. She loves working with kids. I wish people here, because Itaciara, when she comes here, she's a Brazilian in America. She's a fish out of water, and everybody loves her. I know you all love her, but I wish you could see her in her natural habitat. Some of you have, because you've gone there. And she's amazing, and she's amazing with kids, and she's amazing with adults and with young people, and she just comes alive. So she's worked in this school, and that's also given her a lot of opportunities to witness for Christ and so on. I think that's our. Okay, I have prayer requests, and I can't see back there, so I'm going to have to. Okay. So we have 4 main prayer requests. There are others that, if you, in a conversation, I might share. But first of all, we have the opportunity, Lord willing, to begin work this year on building our new auditorium for the church. And this is something we have desperately needed, even since my first time there at the church. And it looks like this time it's going to happen. It's a long story, and I won't go all into it. We were looking at maybe moving to a new property. Every time we went to move to a new property, it fell through. We had offerings that came in. I was in a position I'd never been in before, where I had all the money and I couldn't buy anything. That's never happened, but I did, and so, or the church did. And so finally, we decided, well, maybe God's telling us He wants us to build right here in the lot that's right by our church. And so that's what we're going to do, Lord willing. If you want to pray with us, we have we have a connection with an outfit from the Midwest and actually Arizona, so that's even farther than the Midwest. They build buildings for conservative Baptist churches in our part of Brazil. That's what they do. And so we're on their list, and we're on their list officially for the beginning of 2026. However, there is a chance that another church that was on the list might not be able to do it, and that being the case, we will be bumped up to next month. And so if you would be pray that we would be bumped up to next month. That would be great for us. Whatever the case, they have a whole agreement that they make, and so one of the things is that the church that they're building for, that church is responsible to build the foundation. And so whether or not we're bumped up to September, we're going to start building the foundation, because then the foundation will be all ready by the time they're ready to start in 2026. So pray with us about that. This is a huge need. If you've been to our church, some of you have, you know that if you've seen the movie Aladdin, where the genie says, itty bitty living space, that's what we have. And I think a lot of people have visited us and not really come back because just how uncomfortable our meeting space is. So if you want to pray for that, that's huge for our church. Also, I talked about preparation. I talked about this when we talked about the Bible Institute. Pray. That would be the number one thing if you were to talk to all of our pastors. What does your field need? Our field needs workers. Okay? So pray for that. I already talked about provision for new dormitories for our camp. That's our need number one at camp right now, is more space. Because if we had another dormitory of the same size, within a year, we'd be filling it. Okay? So let's just, I appreciate your prayers for that. And also on a family note, I have no children at home. All of my children are adults, and both of them. And one of them lives here. The other one lives with us. He just turned 18, just graduated from high school, and now we're kind of trying to direct him as far as his plans are, and we're not sure. Our furlough is planned for 2027. He is, it looks like, going to spend some time here in the United States in 2026, but just pray for God to direct his steps. And I'll even go a step further than that. If any of you here know of any opportunities that would be open for a young man of his age, and his interests are in computer programming and in game design and in things like that, which I have no clue what that entails, but if any of you know of any opportunities along those lines, or any opportunities at all, and we would be all ears and interested in knowing. Okay, so that's kind of a quick family update for you. And if we could turn the lights back on, let me see, what time is it? Shoosh. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's American time, right? Okay, good. He said around 7. Okay, so I would like to entertain any questions that you might have. Answer any questions if I can. Yes.
Instead of pool, just say billiard in the future.
Billiard. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. He said instead of pool, it's billiards. All right. Trouble with a capital T in that, right? Yeah. All right. I see. Okay. Yes.
How far is the camp from the church?
2 hours. 2 hours by car. Yeah. So when we go to that helps maybe understand some of the, and our church is very gracious. And when we took the church on, by the way, she asked, I don't know if you ever heard, how far is the church from the camp? It's 2 hours. And so when we go out to the camp, it's an investment of a day at least. And so we try to go out when we can spend 2 or 3 days there. And I was telling somebody today that when we get back, I get back on a Wednesday, I'll be home through Sunday to be at church on Sunday, and then probably Monday we'll go out to camp and spend the rest of the week, because our church is going to have their retreat that next weekend. So we'll be at camp to get that ready. Good question. Any other questions? Yes?
How many years altogether have you been at Ebenezer?
Okay, make me do math. All right, so we started the church in 2012, and then we were at the church with one furlough in between. But if you count furloughs as actually being at the church still, then so it was 2012 to 2020, and then so that's 8 years, and then now we've been there a year and a half, so 9.5 years. Yeah. I think I may have communicated this, but we found ourselves going back and redoing a lot of stuff this last year and a half. Things we thought the church had learned, but, and to be quite frank, correcting some of my mistakes from the first time. Which God's given me that opportunity. So, yeah.
Do you have a timeline in mind for
Yes.
your time at Ebenezer?
Yes. We told the folks at Ebenezer, and that's a good question. He asked, do we have a timeline in mind for the folks at Ebenezer? And yes, we do. We have told the folks at Ebenezer that we will stay there until, we'll commit to being there until 2029. And then at 2029, we will reevaluate it. And it might be that in 2029, the church has grown to the point, we've got a new building, they've grown to the point they can call a pastor, they'll call a pastor, and it'll be wonderful, Or it might be a case that they need a little more time, and we can spend a little more time and help push them over the edge, and we'll do that. However, if it comes to be a case of, okay, they've gotten complacent, the American missionaries here, he'll handle everything, in that case, we'll say, no, the church needs to sink or swim at this point. So that's the timeline we've given the church. Yes?
Tell us about the man with the music, Vonderson.
Yeah, I know some of you have been praying for him. I know my parents, she asked about a guy in our church that I've talked to some people about. His name is Vonderson. Vonderson is an outstanding man. Vonderson, his wife is not a believer. So if his wife were a believer, I would be working with Vonderson to develop him to become the pastor of the church. Okay, that's how on fire and capable of a guy he is. Vonderson lives next to a guy who decided to open up a bar in his house. And you have to know a little bit about Latin American construction. Those of you who have been there know this. Latin Americans like to be close to each other, and so they build their houses right up next to each other. And so imagine that you're living in an apartment, and the guy in the apartment next door takes some of those big speakers that these punk kids like to put in their, if any of you guys have them, I'm sorry, like to put in the back of their trucks and blast it full volume with the bass out. Imagine if someone put one of those in the apartment next to you that you share a wall with, and then starting on Tuesday at 5 o'clock, went constantly from every day through Sunday, from 5 o'clock until 3 in the morning with that thing going full blast. That's Vonderson's life right now. And so, and to say that he is a little stressed out by that would be to put it mildly. He is, however, he's a believer, and the Holy Spirit has been working with him and through him on this, and so he's been handling it about as good as anyone could handle it. They were set to have a court date to try to get the law to come in and say that this guy can't do it, and the judge forgot she had a convention to attend. So now they're waiting for them to set up another court date. But through this all, it's been neat to see Vonderson kind of developing spiritually, working through it. The church has kind of rallied around him. Not much we can do other than pray for him and encourage him. He's our adult Sunday school teacher. He continues to bring outstanding messages. Right now he's talking about Bible study methods, teaching our church Bible study methods. And so he's doing an outstanding job, but we sure appreciate your prayers. And I know he appreciates your prayers too. When Mom said you guys were praying, I told him, and he was very grateful about that. So, yeah, that's the update on him. I wish I had something more. I really do. It's a horrible situation that he's in. Yes, sir.
Are you still writing your adventure book next?
Yeah, in all my spare time. which means no. But it's in the works, and I have this goal of having it done by next furlough. He asked about the next Missionary Max adventure, but the picture that you engraved for me is I've got it framed, so it's right there. It kind of reminds me you should be writing. But, yeah. Any other questions? These are great. All right. I'll be around if anyone has any others or has any that, I wish I'd have asked him that, or if I'm not, you can ask my parents and they'll relay, or just send me a WhatsApp or on Facebook or whatever, and I'll be happy to answer anything about what we've got going on in our ministry. You just wanted me to close in prayer and then finish. All right, let's pray. Father, once again, I want to personally thank you for the opportunity to come, for the opportunity to be associated with this church, and since 1996, and ministry of Pastor Pyatt, and now the Pastor Ryan and the current staff, and Father, we pray for your blessing on them, and pray that this church would continue to grow. And it's amazing to come back, and I thank you that I can come back to a home church and see things going well, and see growth, and see people that I don't know, which means the church is growing. And Father, we thank you for that, and I thank you for that I can have a home church that's such a north star to us as we're working in other parts of the world. Father, I pray for Ebenezer right now as they're currently in their service, and for Alison as he's bringing the message, and for Itasiara and the other people in the worship team as they're leading the church in worship. I pray that you'll bless that church, and even through Alison's ministry today, may people come to Christ, may people be convicted, and there be spiritual growth in the life of Ebenezer. We thank you, Father, for all of these things, and we pray your blessing on this church, on the Ebenezer Church, on the missions works, many, many missions works that this church supports. We pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.